Well, a couple of different ways. Obviously, as the ATF CIO, I've got a very direct role in how ATF uses mobility. And so we've, over the last 2 years or so, been engaged in a number of different pilots around adopting mobility more aggressively within ATF because we have a law enforcement, a regulatory mission that's inherently mobile. So mobility has been something that is very much part of the ATF culture, and it's something where we know we need to be on the leading edge of adopting new mobile technology and capability as it becomes available. So that's one way in which I've been engaged in mobility. The other opportunity I've had is to work with the federal CIO on something called a Federal Mobility Strategy Task Force. And that's been an interesting experience over the last several months since the federal CIO decided that we should develop a federal mobility strategy. And so I've had a chance to work with some of the folks on the OMB staff, as well as a group of about 50 or so mobility practitioners from across the federal government who've come together in recognition of the need to do things more collaboratively and collectively as a federal government in the mobility space. Figuring out how to leverage what each other is doing without having each federal agency try to solve the challenges of mobility individually. There have been a lot of agencies that have done a lot of interesting things in mobility that we can leverage across the federal government. And so the biggest hurdle is figuring out how to do that effectively and in a timely manner such that we don't end up in a position like we've done historically with IT, where we've developed numerous different ways of developing, deploying, supporting IT capabilities across federal agencies and then have to go back and figure out how to rationalize them after the fact. So the challenge we're faced with in mobility is getting to a point where we solve mobility once or in a small number of ways as a federal government and build on that going forward as a solid foundation for all of us to enable more innovation, more cost-effective adoption of mobility, more standards-based adoption of mobility that relies on common principles of security and manageability and application deployment, those kinds of things. A lot of them across various different organizations. Certainly you can look at organizations like the Veterans Administration, you can look at the Department of Agriculture, certainly some of the work that NIST has been doing very much collaboratively with other federal agencies, also being very forward-looking in terms of how they think about mobility and some of the things that we need to work through as a federal government to enable mobility to be used more effectively. And FAA is another example where there have been some very creative things that they've done to put mobility in the hands of their workforce, but also to create mobile capabilities for external users, whether it's pilots in the case of FAA, whether it's consumers or other individuals in the case of other federal agencies. There's been a lot of creative work out there, and that's the kind of work that we need to build on as a federal government, as opposed to having each agency solve all those problems and figure all that out individually. Well, I think certainly the level of adoption is going to continue to grow. I know many agencies have piloted mobile capabilities, much like we have. I think that will certainly continue to grow. I think we'll see more aggressive deployments of that kind of technology as a standard enterprise way of delivering capabilities to users. I think we'll see, in response to the federal mobility strategy, some more integrated thinking about mobility and what it means both for supporting the federal workforce as well as delivering services better and differently and more effectively to citizens. So I think you'll see a lot of continued movement in that area over the next 6 to 12 months.